The fallacy of assuming what you don't see is incomplete is one of the deepest and quietest traps of the human mind. Because while you often think something is missing in your life, what isn't actually there isn't the lack, but simply the layer of visibility that hasn't yet opened. Assuming a possibility is dead just because you don't recognize it is like reading the limitless nature of the quantum field through a limited window. Just as your eyes can't perceive anything when they first enter darkness, your consciousness can't perceive potential without a change in frequency. However, this doesn't mean the potential isn't there. Sometimes you think you're ready for a reality, but the records, patterns, and old frequency imprints carried by your subconscious haven't yet reached the level that will allow that reality to appear. Therefore, when something doesn't come from the universe, most people immediately assume there's a lack. However, in the quantum field, there's no such thing as incompleteness. It's just a matter of whether your perception has reached the breadth to see which door. Think about it for a moment. Remember those moments when you're walking in the forest, and that's why what you say doesn't exist often means I don't see. The human mind, especially in times of uncertainty, tends to ignore the unseen because consciousness fears losing its sense of control if it accepts something it can't see as existing. When your awareness expands, reality reveals itself to you. Yet, the quantum field operates precisely in this unseen realm. Potential awaits the moment of resonance with consciousness to become visible. What you believe is missing is merely a possibility that hasn't yet become visible. Sometimes, the invisibility of something doesn't mean it's delayed. Invisibility is often a form of protection. Because if consciousness begins to see a reality it's not yet ready for too early, it can't support it, or even destroy it. Therefore, when life makes you feel like something is missing, it's actually protecting you. It's waiting for you to find a little more harmony within yourself so as not to force you into a future that's incompatible with your frequency. What you believe is missing is actually a process of completion currently invisible. However, your mind, especially due to disappointments carried over from past experiences, confuses the unseen with absence. Yet absence is one thing, and invisibility is quite another. Non-existence means that a potential has never been formed. Invisibility means that potential has formed, but has not yet entered your consciousness. The quantum field is always full, always creative, always vibrating with possibilities. The space you call emptiness is actually the name of the regions where the observer's light does not reach. Therefore, you should frequently ask yourself, am I truly experiencing a deficiency, or am I simply in a frequency blind spot? Because the answer is often the latter. Even the moments when you don't see progress in your life are actually the times when progress is most invisible. Like a seed taking root underground, the soil doesn't show you the seed is growing, but the roots do. Growth doesn't stop because you don't see it. The invisible progress in your life works the same way. You think it's not happening because you can't see it, but in fact, true growth occurs precisely in that silence. The universe leaves nothing out for you. It simply determines the timing of visibility according to its own natural rhythm. The human mind wants to see immediate results, but the quantum field works in harmony, not speed. That's why you ask yourself, why hasn't it been seen yet? What you're talking about actually already exists. Just waiting for the moment to resonate with you. The fact that you don't see it doesn't mean the truth is missing. It simply means your current consciousness hasn't yet reached the clarity to perceive it. Reality isn't against you, it's seeking alignment with you. And when you achieve that alignment, you'll realize that everything you once thought was missing was actually waiting there all along. The observer's blind spot is one of the subtlest, most invisible obstacles that limits consciousness while simultaneously creating its own reality. Because most people mistake the recurring cycles, delayed beginnings, and unseen opportunities in their lives for nothingness, while not realizing that the mind is actually reading areas its own light has not reached. In the quantum field, reality becomes visible not through what merely exists, but through what the observer can perceive. Therefore, whatever frequency you vibrate at, your perception also operates within the limits of that frequency. And the region your consciousness cannot reach appears to you as an emptiness. Yet this emptiness is not a lack, it is merely a field of possibility that you cannot see. Just as you move around a room with a dim light but fail to notice objects off to the side. Consciousness, in moments of reduced awareness, leaves existing possibilities in the dark and calls this darkness nothing. It is not actually non-existent. It is simply that your light of perception has not expanded sufficiently. Your blind spot appears in line with the registers your consciousness is working with. Patterns from childhood, recurring emotional cycles, attempts to prove yourself, repressed fears, and old belief patterns narrow the light of the observer and lead you to the same conclusions. That's why when you relive the same events over and over again, you ask, why is this happening? The answer is often the observer's blind spot, because when your consciousness is stuck at a certain frequency due to a past record, it can't recognize new possibilities or read them. Sometimes, even when an opportunity presents itself, you fail to recognize it. This doesn't mean the universe isn't offering you anything. On the contrary, it shows that your perception can't choose that door. Opportunities are only visible to those who know how to see. Sometimes you meet someone, hear an idea that could change your life, or hear a word that strikes you. But nothing stirs inside you. You don't notice it at the time. Years later, however, you look back and say, that was actually a sign, but I didn't see it. This is the observer's blind spot. Your consciousness can't process as reality anything it isn't ready for. The quantum field always offers you infinite possibilities, but you can only read as much as your beliefs, the motions, and inner frequency allow. As your inner conflicts increase, your field of vision narrows. And as it does, you begin to misinterpret reality. This is why it sometimes feels like nothing is progressing in your life. In fact, it is, but you haven't yet reached the relative clarity of progress. The observer's blind spot hides not only opportunities but also signals of change. Even when something is about to end, you feel like it's continuing because your consciousness tricks itself into not abandoning its habitual cycle. Just as a train might think you're standing still while moving, reality may have already shifted. But because of your blind spot, you cling to the old frequency. That's why you sometimes say, everything stays the same, but nothing is the same. You simply can't read the change. While the blind spot may seem like a protective mechanism for consciousness, it's actually its greatest limiter. Consciousness blocks out the unknown to protect itself from danger, but this blocking also hinders growth. You ignore the unknown because it frightens you, but everything you ignore may actually be exactly what you need. Therefore, noticing the observer's blind spot is a moment of enlightenment. Once you say, "I may not be seeing," you have already opened the door to seeing. The expansion of perception allows for the expansion of reality. In the quantum realm, everything is already there. The question is which part of you have reached the clarity to perceive. The observer who notices the blind spot can no longer see as before. And even as you read this text, you may be unconsciously sensing the limits of your own blind spot. Perhaps this is the first time you understand that what you thought didn't exist for so long is actually just an unseen possibility. Because once expanded, consciousness chooses not to narrow again. Reality is a mirror of your frequency. The place you can't see is the place you need to transform. When your blind spot expands, so does your life. A delay in time isn't a punishment, it's a setting. For in the quantum realm, nothing is late. It simply follows its own rhythm to work in harmony with your consciousness. And this rhythm is often determined not by the mind's expectations, but by its actual frequency. The human mind, especially in an age of speed, desires immediate manifestation of what it desires. It wants results when an intention is made, a step taken, or a vision conceived. However, due to the records carried by the subconscious, the fluctuation of emotional vibrations, and the influence of internal conflicts, reality doesn't become immediately apparent. This delay wears down many people's patience, saps their motivation, and creates internal conflicts like, "Why isn't it happening to me?" However, the invisible mechanism operates in the opposite way. Delay is a synchronization process that prevents what's wrong for you and adjusts what's right. Just as a musician tunes an instrument to find the perfect note. Life tunes your frequency. This tuning requires an internal alignment that can sometimes span a few days, sometimes months, and sometimes even years. If something doesn't happen right away, it doesn't mean it won't happen. On the contrary, it may be preparing you to carry it. For any reality that becomes visible before your consciousness is ready is disrupted. Therefore, the universe expects you to adapt, not rush. Time delays exist not to slow you down, but to protect you. Sometimes you think you're ready for something, but your subconscious is still stuck in an old fear. Sometimes an opportunity is right there, but you're still carrying a past wound. Sometimes you're about to cross paths with someone, but your emotional field hasn't yet closed, and the universe recognizes this discrepancy and offers you a slight delay. This delay isn't a punishment, but an arrangement to move you onto the correct timeline. In the quantum realm, time isn't linear, but resonance-based. A result becomes visible only when it truly matches its frequency. That's why sometimes even the things you desperately desire don't arrive on time, because their absence is actually to your advantage. A reality arriving when your frequency is a few degrees off disrupts both you and it. Delays, however, correct this shift, calling you back to center, to clearer awareness, to a clearer inner alignment. The human ego rejects delay, but the soul recognizes it. For the soul knows that time is not a line, but a door, and this door opens at the right frequency. If something is delayed in your life today, it's not because you're delayed. It's because you're aligning. Just as a seed grows silently underground, you too have a reality prepared in an unseen realm. it can only surface when this preparation is complete. Even if you don't see what's happening underground, the seed is working, taking root, and growing stronger. If you dig impatiently, you kill the seed. This is precisely what time delay is, an invisible process that forces you to take root. Grow stronger and consolidate your frequency. The mind interprets this as punishment because it perceives everything it can't control as punishment. However, when your consciousness rises, you realize that delays are actually a sign of the right time. Perhaps something you thought wouldn't happen for years was actually being prepared to happen during this period. If you hadn't transformed into a more conscious, stronger, more selective, and more aware version of yourself, you wouldn't be able to carry that reality. Therefore, the delay is forward-looking, not backward-looking. It prepares you for the future. When something goes wrong in your life, you should ask yourself, am I really delayed? Or am I being adjusted? Because most of the time, the answer is the latter. A delayed time doesn't mean the universe is holding you back. It's guiding you forward toward the perfect thing. There's a grand order of what will arrive. When and in what vibration, and this order is undisturbed. Your task is not to accelerate, but to align. And when you align, you'll realize that everything you thought was delayed is actually arriving right on time.
Saying infinite possibilities don't escape you, you remain close to them, actually speaks volumes about one of the most fundamental laws of reality. For in the quantum field, nothing escapes you.
No possibility deliberately excludes you. No opportunity slams the door in your face. What actually happens is that only certain possibilities are reflected in your consciousness, depending on the frequency range you vibrate in. When your consciousness is narrowed, your mind filled with anxiety, and your past experiences have trapped you in an emotional pattern, you lose sight of the vast majority of the options available within that field. And you immediately mistake this invisibility for absence. Yet absence is one thing, and invisibility is another. Invisibility arises from your perception not yet being at the vibrational level necessary to discern that possibility. That's why life sometimes shows you the same cycles, the same people, the same outcomes over and over again, because your consciousness hasn't yet reached the level of awareness to open the doors to a new frequency. Infinite possibilities always flow with you, but you only experience as reality the part of your vibrational band that aligns with your own. Think of it like a radio frequency. There are hundreds of broadcasts in a city, but you only hear the station you're tuned to. There are others, even calling to you, but you can't hear their voices. These are precisely the moments in life when you say, nothing is happening. The only frequency you hear is your own limited tuning. If a dream doesn't come true, it doesn't mean it's escaping you. It shows your frequency is still tied to an old cycle. Creating a new reality begins with first allowing a new breath of consciousness. However, most people, instead of recognizing their inner blockages, blame the outside world. They perceive the universe as silent, indifferent to life, and unfair to fate. However, the universe isn't blind to you. You simply haven't yet reached the clarity to see the areas your own mind has obscured. Sometimes an opportunity passes right by, but you don't look. You look but don't see. You see but don't understand. This doesn't mean the universe has closed a door on you. It simply shows that your consciousness isn't yet equipped to read that door. As consciousness expands, awareness increases and old patterns dissolve, invisible paths become illuminated one by one. Something you can't even conceive of as a possibility today could become the main path of your destiny tomorrow. Because probability doesn't choose you, you choose it. And the choice is shaped by the emotional vibrations in the background of your mind. If your fears are overwhelming, you choose the safe option. If your insecurity is rising, you choose escape. If your awareness is growing, you choose expansion. Thus, the landscape of life opens or closes according to your inner adjustments. You might find that the opportunity you've been searching for years was always there. But you weren't at the level of consciousness to choose it until now. You might find that the answer you've been searching for years has actually been right there before you since day one. But your mind was focused on something else. So you didn't see it. Infinite possibilities await you because the field of possibility is static. It doesn't escape. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't run out. It only becomes visible when your perspective expands. Therefore, instead of waiting for an external miracle, you need to make an internal adjustment. Because what you call a miracle is actually a change in perception. If a door isn't closed, it's simply because you haven't yet illuminated it with your light. Possibilities rest on the edge of reality, a silent potential waiting for the expanse of consciousness. When you change, they too become visible. Because the human mind believes its familiar cycles to be safe. It struggles to look into the light of the unknown. However, the unknown is not darkness, but rather an unrecognized potential. When you change your frequency, you realize that brand new paths open within the same reality. And these paths have always been there. Seeing requires only an expansion of perception. Remember, the universe is not against you. When you are ready, all doors will become visible. Therefore, what is invisible today may suddenly become a reality you encounter tomorrow. The phrase "reality changes when consciousness is adjusted" is often mistaken as a metaphor, but it's actually one of the most fundamental principles explaining the workings of the universe. Because in the quantum realm, reality isn't the sum of random external events, but a dynamic projection created by the reflection of the observer's internal frequency onto the outside world. If your consciousness is stuck in a certain pattern, your life also becomes visible within the boundaries of that pattern, and you call it fate. If your consciousness expands, paths you haven't seen for years suddenly open up, and you call it a miracle. Yet what you call a miracle isn't a new event, it's a new awareness. When a person says, "I'm not changing," yet expects their life to change, they're lost, like someone trying to navigate a new city with an old map. Because external reality is read according to the current state of their internal map. If feelings of worthlessness, inadequacy, fear of loss, anticipation of failure, or a constantly repeating past cycle still linger in the depths of their minds, their consciousness vibrates what they say they want simultaneously with what they don't actually want. That's why most people, when they say, "I want it so much, but it's not happening," unknowingly sabotage their own frequency. Because the conscious mind intends, the subconscious mind rejects, and ultimately, reality reflects this conflict. Only when this conflict is resolved, when the conscious and subconscious minds unite on the same frequency, is the outer world forced to follow suit. This is where true change begins. The inner harmony creates the outer visibility. Sometimes someone says, "My life suddenly improved," but what improves isn't the life itself. You may have been repeating the same belief pattern for years without realizing it. Seemingly insignificant yet powerful inner statements like, I find it difficult, I'm untrustworthy, I'm unlucky, I'm having a bad time, and people don't understand me. Organize all your experiences like a magnetic field at the individual's conscious adjustment. As long as these statements remain unchanged, even if external faces and events change, the outcome remains the same. But one day, when one of those statements breaks, when your consciousness shifts to a new vibration, you suddenly realize that another world has opened up around you. This world has always been there. You just weren't open to it. When consciousness adjusts, reality changes because reality responds not to how you see it, but to the frequency with which you see it. Someone living in the frequency of fear sees danger in the same event. Someone living in the frequency of trust sees opportunity in the same event. Someone living in the frequency of despair sees closed paths. Someone living in the frequency of awareness sees hidden doors. The universe doesn't offer you a different path. You begin to see things differently. When consciousness shifts, even your timeline shifts, because which possibility you choose, which story you align with, which version of yourself you act with, it all depends on your inner vibration. That's why sometimes a decision, an awareness, a moment of awakening can unlock years. The quantum field is like a window of possibility that follows the tuning of consciousness. Whichever window you turn to, the light of life enters from that direction. But if you're constantly looking through the window of the past, you can't see the light of the future. Consciousness is the sum total of not only your thoughts, but also your emotions, beliefs, habits, and inner intentions. When this sum changes, reality is rearranged accordingly. If a person feels worthless, they are naturally drawn to environments that make them feel worthless. Someone who feels empowered becomes visible in areas that require strength. This isn't a coincidence, it's an alignment. This is precisely why when consciousness is adjusted, the flow of life changes. Because you no longer choose the same story as your old vibration. As your consciousness grows, so do your opportunities. As your consciousness expands, so do the paths. A possibility that seems close to you today may become your fundamental truth tomorrow when your consciousness rises. Because reality is not fixed. Changeable. The observer is not fixed, but transformable. And the moment you choose to transform, life must transform with you. The adjustment of your consciousness is the primary adjustment of your future. When your inner software changes, then the external landscape inevitably changes as well. Saying the universe isn't hiding anything from you indicates that, contrary to what many people believe, life isn't a closed box, but rather that consciousness alone determines visibility. Because there's no reality hidden, concealed, or deliberately kept from you in the universe, what's truly hidden is merely the shadow of your own perception. When something is delayed, invisible, or doesn't unfold as desired, the human mind immediately begins to blame the universe. Phrases like, "It's not for me," "The universe doesn't hear me," "My destiny is sealed," "I'm unlucky," and "Why doesn't it happen to others but not to me?" take root in the subconscious. Yet none of these phrases represent the truth. The universe doesn't single anyone out, doesn't favor anyone, doesn't punish anyone, and doesn't exclude anyone. The universe simply pursues harmony. Where there is harmony, there is visibility. Where there is disharmony, there is delay. Humans disrupt the natural flow of life with their inner conflicts and attribute the consequences of this disruption to the silence of the universe. Yet the universe isn't silent. You simply can't hear its response unless you silence your own inner noise. If something doesn't appear in your life, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It simply indicates that you haven't yet reached the vibration necessary to carry that truth. The universe hasn't silenced its voice. You can't hear it. A door hasn't closed on you. You're staring at the wall where the door is. A path hasn't disappeared. You simply haven't turned in the direction you were meant to. Many people wrongly blame the universe for failing to recognize the contradiction between their desires and their subconscious beliefs. They say, "I want it," but deep down, they feel like they don't deserve it. They say, "I'm ready," but fear still lingers within them. They ask, "Why isn't it coming?" but unconsciously fear that if it were to come, their life would change. This inner conflict is the true factor that obscures visibility. The universe doesn't hide anything from you. Only you obscure the truth through your own internal adjustments. It's like looking through a foggy window. The world hasn't changed color. The glass has become dirty. When your consciousness is filled with negative recordings, old wounds, and limiting beliefs about yourself, the universe may present you with thousands of possibilities, but you may not recognize any of them. Doors of opportunity are open, but you never reach for them. You meet someone, a job opportunity arises. You hear a word, but if you don't have the awareness to capitalize on it at that moment, all of this feels like coincidence. Yet, none of it is coincidence. The universe constantly offers synchronization. But you can't make sense of it because of your own blind spot. You think the universe is silent, but it speaks to you every day. It speaks to you through signs, whispers of emotion, recurring patterns, inner impulses, and sometimes even through delays. If it delays something, it's protecting you. If it accelerates something, it's in harmony with you. If it makes something invisible, it knows it can't yet bear. Therefore, no delay is a punishment, no invisibility is rejection. The universe is a teacher, not a guardian. It adjusts to your well-being and doesn't push you into the wrong frequency. But the mind,
especially in fear mode, mistakes every silence for rejection. This is why people often make mistakes. They say, "The universe is testing me," but the universe doesn't test. It simply acts as a mirror.
it shows you your frequency. If there's chaos within, you'll see chaos outside. If there's clarity within, you'll see alignment outside. What complicates such a simple mechanism is a person's own emotional baggage. The universe isn't hiding anything from you. You mistake your own fears for the silence of the universe. The moment you open yourself, expand your consciousness, release old patterns, and say, "I'm ready to see," you'll realize everything has been waiting for you for years. Because reality wasn't running away from you, you were running away from yourself. When you stop running away from yourself, it's not the universe's doors that open, but your eyes. And when your eyes open, you'll realize that the places you once thought were dark are actually filled with light. To say that nothing is lost, that it simply doesn't appear to you in your time, suggests that the delays, invisibility, and silent processes in your life have nothing to do with absence. On the contrary, they are waiting for the right frequency, the right moment, the right alignment to resonate with you. Because in the quantum realm, there's no such thing as getting lost. Potentials don't run out over time. Possibilities don't move away from you, and the lines of destiny don't break or disappear. Everything exists as a vibration, becoming visible or invisible only according to the frequency your perception is tuned to. Therefore, sometimes during periods when you think there's no progress in your life, a greater alignment may actually be occurring deep down. Things that appear static from the outside can be a sign of a profound restructuring within. Like the silence of a root growing underground, you see no movement, but the seed is developing. The invisibility of many processes in your life is similar to this silence. You think they don't exist because they're unseen. Yet they grow stronger because they're invisible. The human mind dislikes uncertainty. It confuses the fact that something isn't coming now with the fact that it will never come. However, not appearing now simply means not being in frequency harmony with you right now. Everything has its own rightful time. And the more you try to force this time, the more reality recedes, because the universe follows harmony, not force. If something doesn't appear in your life, it's not because it's distant, but because you haven't yet fully reached the clarity to perceive it. Sometimes it's impossible for that thing to arrive without you changing. That's why when your level of consciousness rises, things you've been waiting for so long suddenly appear before you. They weren't lost. They were waiting for the moment they would align with you. People often think, if only it had happened sooner, but they don't know that if they had happened earlier, they wouldn't have been able to bear it. This is precisely why the invisible timeline works, to protect you, strengthen you, prepare you, and enable you to reach a version of reality that won't burden you. The universe doesn't hide anything from you, doesn't reject you, doesn't punish you. It simply doesn't open the door to a timeline that contradicts yours. You mistake your impatience for loss, but in reality, it's not loss. It's a process of alignment. A job, a person, an opportunity, or even a transformation you've been waiting for a long time isn't actually lost. It's simply waiting for the moment to catch its own light. Because reality appears at the frequency you're ready for. If it appeared when you weren't ready, you would misinterpret it, use it wrong, consume it at the wrong time, or push it back out of fear. That's why some of life's doors open late. Opening early would be to your detriment. It's important to understand this. What's delayed isn't actually late. The feeling of delay is merely a reflection of your expectation of time. To the mind that sees time as linear, waiting seems like a loss. Yet at the quantum level, time is not a matter of sequence, but of harmony. When you align, reality appears instantly. That moment sometimes feels like a great coincidence, sometimes like a miracle. Sometimes it makes you wonder, why did this happen now? It happened now because you were ready. Therefore, nothing is lost. It only appears when the time comes to meet you. When you accept this, you realize that life doesn't act against you, but actually moves with you. As you change, paths change. As you expand, possibilities expand. As you grow stronger, even the doors you thought were old will open again. Perhaps what you thought was lost today will appear tomorrow at the right moment in the whole story. Perhaps what you say isn't happening today has actually been perfectly prepared for you for a long time. What you don't see isn't missing. It's just that its time hasn't come. And when the time comes, you'll realize that you weren't lost even for a moment, but was simply waiting for the right moment to meet you. You are not alone on this journey. Every content where we meet on the same frequency is here to expand your awareness a little further. If these profound narratives resonate with you, subscribe to our channel and let's move towards a higher consciousness together. Just leave a word in the comments. I am ready.